Welcome class to chapter 1 video review where I'm going to be doing about 30-minute video lectures for each of the chapters. And this is chapter 1, introducing the world of psychology. So I have a lot of slides, so I'm just probably going to breeze through some of these and then go over some important points in each chapter. So what is psychology? Study of mental activity and behavior, which are based on brain processes. And we'll start with psychology originated in philosophical questions, and certainly before, I believe, Western psychology. That's why I denote Western psychology and Eastern psychology. There was quite a bit of analysis and stuff related to psychology, scientific study of the mind. But in the book they kind of talk about Plato and Aristotle, 400 to 300 BCE, and some of the different ideas that they were debating, including free will versus determinism. Are we able to choose, or is everything based on fate? And a lot of the Greek plays kind of played on that. And certainly nature versus nurture. Is our personality, our choices even, like we talk about with free will, and our lives determined a lot by our inborn influences, nature, like genetics, and or nurture is their, the way that we were raised, and our environment much more of an effect. Plato had the idea of innate ideas, and Aristotle's knowledge could be found through the senses. So Plato believed that there was sort of these core innate ideas that pre-existed before we started interacting with the world. And Aristotle said, hey, let's pay attention to how we take in things and learn things. And certainly that was the beginning, Aristotle's approach of empiricism in Western thought. We also, a little later, some people like Aristratus, Herophilus, and Galen started studying the body and started dissecting Roman gladiators after they were killed. And they started exploring the idea of the mind-body problem, which is, are the mind and the body separate and distinct? Greeks and the Romans believed that mind comes from brain activity, and the idea is a little later, like Descartes tried to say the mind and the body are separate and yet intertwined, he talked about, but he really emphasized dualism, that the mind and the body are separate, that there's something different than, so we have the brain and the body, and then the mind exists somewhere different, I guess is the idea. It doesn't come from brain activity. So this was a debate that went on, and the idea of materialism or monism versus dualism was going on in terms of that debate. Materialism or monism is the mind is not separate from the brain. Mind activity derives from brain activity. Andreas Vesalius, the founder of modern human anatomy, and these are his pictures right here, was really a proponent of that, including Thomas Hobbes, Pierre Gassendi, and Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia, who were at this time existed with Descartes and were having debates about the subjects. And then we move forward in terms of a lot of the influential schools of thought in psychology, and I'll briefly touch on each of these. Certainly the founder of psychology was Vilhelm Wundt, and I've got just a lot of cool little pictures from the Vilhelm Wundt library. And experimental psychology began in 1879 when Vilhelm Wundt established the first psychology laboratory. The purpose of the laboratory was to identify basic parts or structures of the conscious mind, characteristics of sensations, quality, intensity, extent, and duration, and theory of perception. They're using experimental techniques, reaction time experiments, and introspection methods, meaning self-report of conscious experiences of the senses. When I first learned about Vilhelm Wundt, I thought introspection was like, yeah, look inside yourself, report, about your dreams or whatever your experiences and stuff. It's very systematic and controlled in terms of he was putting his participants, through various rigorous techniques, and then asking them, or various rigorous experiments, and then asking them to report on what they experienced. And so these were some of the machines that he was using to measure reaction time and stuff like that. And there's some of the famous people, Wilhelm Wundt, and then you'll also see Ticknor, which is the next guy right there. I'll see him, I think it's right there. Anyway, hey, take a pause for a second and do a fun activity. This is the Stroop test that tests the Stroop effect. If you've done it already, it'll be fun to do again. And so what you want to do is, the directions are to read the color, not the word. And so read the color, not the word for this one. Then read the color, not the word for this one. And then notice the effects. Okay, you're back from the pause, and so what did you notice? You noticed that these were a little bit more difficult to read, right? There was a little more of a extended reaction time, which means that there's something incongruous going on, and obviously the incongruous is our mind wants to read the word and not the color, and unconsciously we just automatically read the word, as other research has shown. And so what you have to do is almost stop that, and it shows that there's some processing going on. And so this is the types of things that they were doing. Ticknor, different people, Stroop in the 1930s, to take a look at our conscious experience and the underlying parts. They can be broken down into, and if we can understand the basic elements of the conscious experience, it's a scientific basis for understanding the mind. So really talking about the structures of the mind and how we experience things like perception. The color of an apple, it's red, it's bright. Oops. And then there was William James, who argued that the mind was much more complex than the elements and could not be broken down. And he was a big proponent of functionalism, an early school of psychology concerned with the adaptive purpose or function of the mind and behavior. The goal of functionalism was to describe how the conscious mind aids in adaptation to its environment, obviously very much influenced by Darwin and evolution. And I've got some links there that you can kind of check out. And then I just busted out some really cool quotes and different things that William James talked about. He's really known as one of the greatest psychologists of all time, and for good reason. He's talking about pragmatism and free will versus determinism, and some really cool ideas about consciousness and changing your attitudes and changing your life. Being appreciated is very important, obviously. And that's what I enjoy about William James, is really digging more deeper. And I used to do this with intro to psychology classes, is you just get a brief view of kind of who they are and stuff. But if you dig deeper, you can find out really cool things about them. And he was talking about self-change here and developing good habits and stuff. So stuff that's really useful, and that's what I felt was really cool. And then we got Sigmund Freud, really cool Netflix show, a couple of them. There's one, I think Freud and Jung, about Freud and Jung and their battle and stuff, but I'm recollecting one on Netflix also that goes over Freud's life. It's about, I'll have to send you the link and stuff, and it's not coming to me now. But it goes over how he basically found the talking cure, and that was free association, having the client lay on the couch. When you're laying down, you're more in a vulnerable position, and when also kind of like when you sleep, right? And so more access to the unconscious. He believed that there was an unconscious, and a lot of our, his patients' conflicts were caused by repressed unconscious conflicts, things that they weren't able to bring out and admit to themselves and become conscious of. And he believed that through free association and talking about it, and through a kind of helpful therapist that can help the patient analyze what's going on, you can free yourself from those unconscious conflicts. And he had a background in medicine, neurology, worked with Charcot and Breuer, and worked with Anna O and helped her through hypnosis and her hysteria. just different ideas about Freud, understand how the unconscious thoughts cause psychological disorders, and there's a conflict between the three areas, the tripartite of the personality, which is your id, your superego, and your ego. The id is your animal self, your sexual drives, and your aggressive drives. Your superego is your internal parent, your internal critic, if you will, telling you right from wrong, what you should and shouldn't do. And then the ego is the one that kind of your conscious self that deals with these things. And then Gestalt theory was really cool, and in terms of developing in opposition to structuralism as well as functionalism, there was this idea of experiencing the whole, that the whole personal experience is different simply from the sum of its parts. And this is fascinating too, because I mean, these ideas predated a lot of the stuff that people are finding with brain and perception right now. Is, you know, you have this flood, as we'll study when you study the brain and consciousness, you have this flood of sensory experience that comes in, and you have to kind of transduce that, all that, you know, different complex stuff that's going on. All these, for example, when you're seeing things, all these various photons and different things going on. And the Gestalt really is the idea of the brain making sense of all of that complex information coming in, and making it so you have an intelligible experience that's not overwhelming and makes sense. And the brain does that, and it changes the world that you see out there into an experience that makes sense. And as you'll see right here, there's various things that the brain does to incorporate things, and once you start to look at not just the structures but the whole, then you begin to see, wow, the brain is really magnificent in making sense of the experience. The fundamental principle of prognance pithiness is one of the ideas that